Chris, Rotarians and guests, thank you, Eric, once again introducing me. You'll keep one day. Rotarians, today we are very privileged to have McDonald, or Alistair MacDonald, to talk to us. Alistair is the Chief Executive of Tennis SA. You will know that all of those who have managed to read their bulletin, quite a lot of information about Alistair. He seems to pick up lots of awards. He recently picked up as the Administrator of the Year of Sports in South Australia for Sports SA. He's quite a unique individual, that he has actually been a very competent tennis player, playing in America, etc., whilst picking up a Doctorate of Psychology. So he's quite an educated individual and finds himself running tennis, which is probably a great way to have an academic career and to also pursue your sporting career at the same time. He is, as you can be in South Australia at the moment, you can't help but not come here today and notice there's a lot of tennis going on out on the tennis courts, but plus also the World Tennis Challenge, which he is one of the co-tournament directors of and was instrumental in helping bring that to Adelaide. His role in South Australian tennis means he has over 260 affiliated clubs to consider, and you have to obviously have a lot of knowledge and psychology to able to manage that. The other thing about Alistair that's unique, he has actually worked in the corporate world in consulting in PKF before he took on the role in Tennis SA. But we're also privileged today that it's the first, I think, public speaking matter that he's been, because he will be leaving South Australia and going to Victoria, where he's recently been appointed as a Tournaments and Competitions Manager for Tennis Australia, which is a pretty important position to go to. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome McDonald to a wide-ranging talk on tennis.
Thank you, Jeff. And Eric, I'll apologise for my outfit, but I came straight from across the road. So, Jeff asked me just to talk about a few things, maybe, and I'll scan across various aspects of tennis and sport. My background is in psychology and business, and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to the University of Texas, where I went over after my schooling in Adelaide to Austin, Texas, sister city of Adelaide, and did my schooling over there. What I found when I went over there was a unique system that I wasn't quite aware of. I went over there as a young boy, not fully understanding how the system works over there, but logged on campus with 50,000 students and proceeded to play tennis. And in my current role as an administrator, I find it quite fascinating because I come across both the good sides and the bad sides of sport. The good sides being helping people into the game at any age, 4, 84, whatever it be, helping people develop, like many of you would have watched or read about Luke Seville from Cobb Dobler, who won Junior Wimbledon this year, incredible effort. But you also see some of the fallout, which is both young athletes and parents getting disillusioned with the sport because of the lack of opportunity, or what they perceive a lack of opportunity or help. I actually had the opposite experience with tennis. Although I didn't make it on the top level tour for a long period of time, I feel quite thankful for the sport and the fact that I was able to get my schooling completely paid for and play the game of tennis instead of pulling beers over the bar. No offence to pulling beers over the bar, but I was lucky enough to go on court and play and represent the University of Texas and basically get my schooling taken care of. For some of you who don't know the system over there, it's quite a unique system. The football team at the University of Texas has a stadium that fits 105,000. It's sold out 5 years in advance. It gives you a bit of perspective. So these are 18 to 22-year-old players running around on scholarships, not paid. Some are paid, they get caught, they're in a lot of trouble, but technically amateurs. So, and in fact, I was talking to one of the things I try to do is help our athletes who can't transition straight on the tour to go to the US, and I was talking to the current coach of the school I went to, where I went to university, and it's quite a complex business when you think about it. So the University of Texas is part of a conference which they play other teams, and at the moment the conference that Texas is in, they are now being blackballed because the university went out and set up its own broadcast station to broadcast their own games, and basically the other schools are not happy with that because they want to do a collective deal. So it does paint a different picture. Why I'm telling you that is because one of the roles moving forward with all sport is creating opportunities for people who pursue the game. And it's not just about the athletes at the very, very top, but there's lots of opportunity in sport, whether it be administration, coaching, volunteering, or playing. This is a busy week for us here. We've got the World Tennis Challenge. Hopefully most of you know it's on. If you don't, I'm probably not doing my job. But I'll give you a little history on that event because I think it represents the tennis community in South Australia. We're very fortunate here. I think we have the strongest tennis community in the country, both from a playing point of view, producing players like Mark Woodford, Darren Cale, Roger Rashid, Leighton Hewitt, now Luke Seville, Alicia Mollick, keep going, Adrian Quist, but also from a volunteer capacity. We are very lucky in the state that we have a strong volunteer capacity with associations full of volunteers delivering the sport, and as much as we talk about a lack of volunteers, at the moment tennis, we're very fortunate that people keep coming through, which is fantastic. When we lost the ATP event, this was the second longest ATP event in the world, the Adelaide event, when it moved to Brisbane, when Brisbane built their new $85 million tennis centre. Within 2 days of the announcement, and just to take it back a step, we had 1 day's notice that that event was moving. So I had a call from Tennis Australia at the time saying, I got some bad news. The event, I'd only been in the role for just over a year or so, and they said, look, bad timing, but we're going to make an announcement tomorrow that the event's moving to Brisbane. So I got the phone, called everyone and said, look, this is what's happening. We got through that. Within 2 days, I had a phone call from Mark Woodford, Darren Cale and Roger Rashid, who said, what happened? We need to do something. They all said, we'll be back in town in the next couple of months, we need to get together. And at that meeting, we sat down and we thought, well, what do we do? It's actually not that easy to get an ATP licence. They're quite valuable. They're worth quite a bit of money, and there's not many weeks in the year that the ATP or WTA, which is the women's tour, allow you to have an event. So we had to come up with something different. And I guess the positive of that is when you get the opportunity to think differently, you start with a blank sheet of paper and off you go. So we thought about the connections that Darren and Mark had, particularly, and Roger as well, with the legends of the game, and we thought that they bring a certain entertainment to tennis. For those of you who've been along, I think Henri Lecomte certainly brings a certain flair, and I might tell you a story about him in a minute, but we also thought that as tennis lovers and people in the sport, we wanted to offer a contest, and we wanted to offer the opportunity for people to see tennis play at its highest level. And that was the combination of the current players, which we have at the moment, and the leading tennis players. To just mix it up a bit, which has been received by the general public really well, but a bit harder by the traditionalists, as we play two courts at the same time. And we just thought, why not? We can do it. We're not governed by anyone, so we'll give it a crack and do that. And that formed World Tennis Challenge. We've gone from being an event that really did struggle, to be honest, to put bums on seats, to last year selling out our 3 nights. This year we didn't quite sell it last night, but the next 2 nights look like they're going to be pretty full. And people don't realise that we also have a participation event that goes with that has 2,500 people playing during the week, which is the largest participation tennis event in Australia. So from what was a difficult situation, we've had a very good outcome, and it's been great for our sport, and that is an example of the tennis community pulling together. Our little community, but in tennis, it's no different from whatever community or involvement you have, but I think it's a great example of some times where the elite athletes are perceived to be about themselves, elite, but here was a guy, Darren Cale is probably one of the most respected coaches in the world, if not the most respected. Mark Woodford's probably one of the greatest doubles players of all time, and Roger's been one of the world's best coaches over the last few years. Example of pulling together, and they did it on the basis of us keeping an event in Adelaide. So quite a phenomenal effort by those guys, and something I'm certainly thankful of, and the tennis community is thankful of. Having the players here has been great for us. I particularly enjoy having the legends here. I remember the first year event we put on, we weren't too sure what was going to happen. We invited Henri Leconte down here because pretty much everyone loved him at the old Rio that we used to have. And I had many of you probably heard the story, read about the story, but the first night Henri got here, he got a little excited. We had a cocktail show and he hadn't been back to Australia for, must have been 10 years or so. And he came straight off the plane and we were actually at the Cooper's Brewery having a function, and he was putting back a few white wines, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, Ali, you know, you're going to take us out tonight, aren't you? And this is the first year that you're going to blind you," and we weren't quite prepared, so I said, "Look, I can't possibly go out." And anyway, I found the nearest corporate. I said, "Would you take him somewhere nice?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll take him down to Henley Square and we'll show him the ropes." And of course, they all got really excited and they showed Henri a pretty good time. And the next morning, I get up, come down to the courts, check in, and someone comes in and says, "Is the Intercontinental called you yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't had a call from the Intercontinental." And they said, "Oh, right." He said, "Henri got home a little late last night." And I said, "Oh, okay, what was he doing?" They said, "Oh, 11:30. And I said, "Oh, that's not too bad. 11:30 is not too late." And he said, "Yeah, but at about 3 o'clock in the morning, because he'd been on the plane all night, he decided to go to the toilet, and he got the doors confused. He went to go to the toilet. He was actually stark naked. Went to go to the toilet, but actually picked the wrong door and actually ended up outside the room." So Henri, being Henri, thought, "What do I do now?" So he grabbed the little "Do Not Disturb" sign from the door, put it around his private part, which you can only imagine what that is, and proceeded to walk down the lobby, across the lobby to the desk and ask for his room key. At the time, I thought that was a little bit of an embellishment, but we actually went to the Australian Open. We take guests over to the Australian Open, and I was sitting there with the manager at the time of it was actually the Hyatt back then, to be honest, and Adam Mike turned to me and he said, "Ali, the strangest thing happened to me. I was looking through my run sheet. I get a run sheet every morning, and there at the bottom of the run sheet, it's halfway down, it said 3 a.m, Henri Leconte in lobby, nude, asking for a room key." So he certainly has added a bit of flair and something quite unusual to our event, but he has done so much for us. And the other thing too is, the reason why I like the Legend guys being here is just the stuff you learn about them. We took John McDonald to the art gallery yesterday. A couple of things I took away from that tour. One was, I hadn't been to the art gallery in a long time, and neither apparently anyone else that had been in our group. But fantastic place. If you ever want a bit of serenity and a break from the daily grind, that's the place to go. But McEnroe's a very, very intelligent man. In fact, what I took away from that is his knowledge of art was absolutely amazing. We had the curator there and a couple of art heavyweights, and he proceeded to absolutely nail every question they asked him about art, and he actually took everything on board. And everyone was blown away, particularly myself when we went on this tour, just how much he's into art. He's had a public gallery. He also has a private gallery. He buys and sells art. And he also has public showings for people when he wants to. So that was fascinating as well. I'll just probably finish on a bit of the challenges of sport. You might be interested in this. There's a lot going on. We're here. The Big Bash has taken off. There was an article in today's paper I haven't read yet, but the opportunity of cricket competing with the Australian Open for that time slot. Obviously, that's the holy grail for tennis, and that's the cash cow for our sport. The Australian Open is the biggest event in the Southern Hemisphere, and what has been very striking to me over the last 10 years is how professional sport has come across the board. Who would have thought 20 years ago there'd be 680 AFL players earning an average of $220,000 a year? It'd be quite staggering, I would have thought 20 years ago. With the Big Bash now, we'll probably have over 120 cricketers earning a full-time wage out of the game. With soccer, we now have over 130 athletes in Australia earning a living out of the game. I mention that because you might be interested to know how many people in Australia do you think are making a living out of playing tennis? Any ideas?
20.
Yeah, it's about. This is unsubsidised, so I've prefaced that by not being subsidised by training or Tennis Australia. probably about 6 men and probably about 8 women. So it's quite staggering when you think about the professional tour. And we did a presentation about 6 months ago because we started thinking about this. Where does tennis fit in the landscape of sport? There's 4 things we need to consider. Is it culturally significant? I think tennis is culturally significant. It's been around for a long time, particularly because people talk about the Rose Bowls, Ken McGregor's, all that kind of stuff. Is it internationally significant and recognisable? I'd say yes. Most people know who Roger Federer is, Rafael Nadal. Is it locally important? Right now we have more kids starting tennis than we've ever had. We had 30,000 kids go through, between 8 and 10 go through our Hot Shots program the last year. So locally we're actually pretty good. The difficulty tennis faces in the next 10, 15 years is domestically we've become a little irrelevant. And what I mean by that is the reality of the sport, and I don't want to shock someone because I'm a purist with tennis and I know where it fits between your local club to your elite players. I think I'm astutely aware of all that, is that sport has become a profession. Like accounting, like law, like teaching. There might not be as many jobs around as some of those other fields, but in essence now you're having people focus on their sport quite young, and through their school they're looking at AFL. Why wouldn't you? If there were 680 contracts out there, and you're a good athlete, you'd like to grab one of those. So one of the difficulties facing tennis is how do we create more opportunities for aspiring tennis players to earn a living. I say that because the average age, can someone have a guess at the average age of the top 100 men and the top 100 women? What would you say? 24, 22, 21. You guys aren't too bad. It's actually 26. 26, 27. 26 for the women, 27. What do you think the average entry is? So to make a living out of tennis, and I'm saying to make that kind of a full-time living, because you've got to travel, it's one sport you've got to pay for your travel, essentially. You've got to fly yourself everywhere, you normally get accommodated, but what do you think the average entry ages of the top 100? That's pretty much, I think, the benchmark of where you've made it as a tennis. 20? 15? 8? 23.
Oh, you mean entry
into the top 100, sorry. Yeah. I've got to get my kids playing a bit more if it's 8. The average age of men and women is 23. Does anyone realise why that might be a problem for tennis? Small window. How do you fund someone from 17 to 23 to pursue their dream? It's quite challenging, isn't it? So at 17 you leave school. If you're not in the Australian Institute of Sport or Tennis Australia, one of their programs, how do you fund yourself on the tour? That is one of the biggest problems that our sports faces. And do you think there's a reason that Shane Warnes is still around? The age is getting older of these professional athletes. Why wouldn't you? You're making some pretty good money. There's doubles players on the tour now who are 38, 42. But still playing. So I just thought I'd share that insight with you because sometimes in our sport, or any sport, it's now a profession, and these are some of the challenges that we face. I'll just circle back to finish on why I mentioned my background in college tennis to start with. If I said to someone college tennis is the way to go, which is US tennis 5, 10 years ago, they probably would have said, look, no, that's a nice thing to do, but that's it. If the average age is 23, that's entry into the top 100 of making a living, and you're 17 when you finish school, 18, college tennis all of a sudden becomes an option. University degree, you can come out. You've all heard of John McEnroe, haven't you? All heard of Jimmy Connors? Went to college. James Blake, you might have heard of, pulled out of my event, very disappointed, but went to Harvard. So, now that's not for everyone, but one of the challenges facing tennis is that we have to look at more opportunities for people to transition and pursue their dreams moving forward. And that's going to be, I only mention that because I don't actually have the answer. So, but it's certainly a challenge for the sport where we want to be a sport that's inclusive, that gives people the opportunity to pursue their dreams. And moving forward, I think one of the biggest challenge is to keep tennis domestically important. It's always going to be internationally important. Very hard to eradicate something that's culturally significant. Lots of people playing tennis are locally important. It's actually helping people to pursue their dreams between the ages of 17 and 23. I'm going to finish on that note. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight. I want to thank Jeff for inviting me today, and if you come along to the tennis, I hope you enjoy your time. If you have any questions, I'll take them.
Alistair, listening to you talking about the challenge that Australia has in regard to tennis, we see, if my geography is correct, the European and Eastern European by name players seem to be very significant in the winners' lists. Now, what is their process of raising these young people to that level in such high numbers?
Well, I guess without trying to be here for another hour debating the issue, because everyone's going to have an opinion on this, I'll give you my humble opinion on one of the reasons I think. I think we're very fortunate we've got a Grand Slam. There's 4 Grand Slams that pretty much support the sport. I mean, they are huge events. Wimbledon and the Australian Open, particularly for us, are extremely important. I look at countries like Spain where they don't have a Grand Slam, but they have an unbelievable tennis culture and producing players. Same with France. France has a Grand Slam. I think one of the issues we've got to debate is funding versus providing opportunity. So what I mean by that is giving the opportunity, putting the money, if you just take the financial opportunities, do you put that into funding you, Eric, as a 17-year-old, to pursue your dreams, or do I provide the vehicle for you to compete for it? And by that way, hopefully, I toughen you up along the way. I think sometimes we have very good juniors that are extremely well looked after, and when they transition into the senior tour, it's very hard because all of a sudden they go from being the best player in Australia, maybe in this region, maybe in the world, to there's another 400, 500 players. They rank 2,000 players on the tour. They estimate there's another 18,000 trying to play. So I think one of the issues we face is some of those countries have done particularly well. They have a very strong competition tournament structure that enables people to compete for their living. Yeah. That's just my opinion. So, yeah.
Ellie, 2 questions. Is Leighton Hewitt finished, and is Bernard Tomic potentially as good as we hope he is?
I think I can answer Leighton's in 2 parts. I think most likely he is finished in the sense that I think he's going to struggle to win a significant tournament again. I even want to preface that by he's a freak of the way he plays, and he's so competitive that he just look at him now. Most people want to write him off, including myself. You sit there and go, look, he really is done. He lost in 3 sets yesterday to a very good player, Troiki, but to be able to go 3 sets, to be able to go 5 sets, I'm not sure he can do that, but he's so competitive. I think what he might do in the next couple of years, I don't think he'll win a Grand Slam. I think he's finished in that regard. I think he might jag some incredible Davis Cup wins for us, something like that in the next 2 years, because he's that type of player who, if he just focuses on the major tournaments and plays things like Davis Cup, I think he can do those kind of things. I don't think he'll win another Grand Slam. In regards to Bernard Tomic, I find that quite fascinating because there's a good example of living under the microscope. The kid's been great since he's been 12. He's the highest ranked teenager in the world. He's one of 2 teenagers in the top 100, which goes back to what I was just talking about before I finished. There's 2 teenagers in the top 100. The top 100 being where you can make a living out of the game, essentially. I think he's going to be really good. Whether he wins a Grand Slam, I'm not too sure, because there's been a lot of good players that haven't won a Grand Slam. In fact, we've got Tommy Haase, who's been number 2 in the world, been to 3 or 4 semi-finals and never won a Grand Slam. I think he'll struggle to win a Grand Slam, but his improvement this year is absolutely phenomenal. To go from where he's at, and if any of you, like me, have watched him play, sometimes I watch him play and I think, how can he be this good? He's kind of jump balling, throwing different stuff, but they don't know how to play it. So I think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to be a very good player for Australia for a long time.
When I was playing a bit of tennis after school in the early 50s, we were a top nation.
Yep.
We had both of the top players.
Yep.
We also had a fellow called Harry Hopman. Now, if we can find another Harry Hopman, we'll get to the top again.
Yep. Probably. I mean, it's certainly an international game there. That's why I think Eric and I said all the countries would play. Tennis is the second most played sport behind soccer globally now. So That's one of the challenges we face. But also, we're getting some of these past legends back involved in the game, which is great. So, but I appreciate it. Yeah.
John.
Sir, would you please tell us the structure of the income, how they get paid? Like, do they get paid to go there? Do they get paid accommodation? Do they get paid so much for the first victory and so on?
Yeah, we were just looking at this the last couple of months, actually, just on the side talking about this. In fact, we were talking about this with the guys yesterday. I mean, tennis is one of the few sports where you have to fly yourself everywhere. So you're unless you're playing Davis Cup, or representing something, you're pretty much on your own flying everywhere. When you get to a tournament, you're pretty much getting your accommodation paid for and stuff like that. Except when you lose, you don't. So it's quite a cutthroat sport. Once you lose, they basically kick you out of the hotel. And that's why you're on tour for 30, 40 weeks a year. You're travelling. Most of the top guys have a coach. So that's the way it's broken down. Obviously, the Grand Slams are slightly different because they are bringing a significant amount of revenue from broadcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, on the tour, you basically get paid prize money. With our format, we're paying appearances for people to come down and play because we're an exhibition event, so it's slightly different.
What sort of money do they get for these appearances? The first round, second round?
It depends on the tournament. So there's different levels of, they call them 250, 500,000, like it's just a terminology. But there's different, obviously the Grand Slam's the biggest purse. So the Grand Slams, they're getting $25,000 for making the first round. So you think that's quite a bit of money. So that's why, if you ever want to see cutthroat tennis, go to Melbourne Park and watch the wildcard playoff they have. Because pretty much, for those guys, they're playing for their next dinner. Because if they make it, that's $25,000. Most of the other tournaments, you might make $1,000 if you make the first round. But you also got to pay for a couple of nights on either end of that. Because you're not going to get you fully covered. You've got to get there, flight, maybe a coach, all that kind of stuff. So it all adds up pretty quickly.
Last question, Steve.
Thank
Sorry, Tony. You want
Alistair, I'm sure most of us have heard Kevin Sheedy talk about sort of the business of sport.
Yep.
He makes a couple of very good points. One, just look how many people are on the field at a break in the AFL. There's 18 players each side, and there's less than 60 people running around. There's something wrong. He then goes on to say that only about 1 in 100 people actually make it beyond a couple of games in the AFL. I've got a question in two parts. You got any idea what the attrition rate is for tennis players? And secondly, given your insight into the American system, any idea about how American football sits in that space? Like, how many people does it take to make one, substantial player? Sorry, it's...
Yeah. With tennis, I mean, there's a good example. All I can say is there's 680 people, it's going to be rough, playing in the AFL. And if you equate that back to tennis, there's nowhere near that amount playing. Like in Australia, earning a living, if you just look at the tour. That doesn't include college teams, where they value scholarships of about $75,000 a year, stuff like that. So, I'm glad we're not the NFL, because the NFL, which is American football, is having all sorts of issues with all these old players coming back and suing and saying, I can't walk. And so they've got their own issues at the moment. But the average tenure of an AFL football, I think, is 3 years, the average, the mean point. So if you look at a sport and you want to benchmark domestic sport, I think tennis is an international sport, but domestic sport, as a sport, we probably sit down and say, okay, how do we create more opportunities for Australian kids to pursue their dreams and play between the ages of 17 and 23 before they hit the tour? And 3 years would be an ideal opportunity to provide a tennis player to make it, because 3 years is the average tenure of an AFL. Versus at the moment, what we're saying is at the end of, when they turn 17, you pretty much got to, unless you go down a different pathway, club tennis, college tennis, you've got to chance your arm essentially. You look at our squad at the moment, we have 25 kids in our National High Performance Academy here. You'd probably say the reality is less than one would make that. Well, easily less than one, yeah. That's the start. I don't want to be doing, I'm sorry, I'm very positive about our sport, but that's the kind of challenges we face. Yeah.
Thank you, Ali, for giving us insight into tennis. On behalf of all Rotarians, I'd like to wish you all the best for the new role, and I'd imagine most Rotarians would be very happy for you to come back again and give us an insight into how the new role progresses as time goes by. But Rotarians, I'd also like to present a little token of our appreciation. Please thank Ali.